Good evening and welcome to today's Asset Colloquium. Of course, it is the last working day of the year, and so one could see the thin attendance, maybe due to that or other reason. But probably it's also a good time to ponder on how long is the long path for developed India. So that is what the title of the topic today by Dr. Dinesh Srivastava. It's very nice and thankful that on the behalf of ASET that he has accepted to agree to give this talk on rather short notice. It happened that he gave this talk at the recently concluded high energy high energy physics symposium, DAE symposium at nuclear physics at Indore, and he happened to post this on Facebook, and that is how I kind of caught him and asked him to come down and repeat this talk. And once again, thank you very much, Professor Srivastava, for coming on here and agreed to give this talk. Many of the people here in this hall here know, of course, Professor Srivastava quite well, but we also typically have audience joining on the social media. And for the benefit of all of them and also for younger audience, probably let me take a minute to introduce Dr. Dinesh Kumar Srivastava, who is at the moment honorary visiting professor and INSA senior scientist at National Institute of Advanced Studies. It's called NIAS in Bengaluru. He joined the Variable Energy Cyclotron Center, VCC, way back in 1971 after graduating from training school, BRC training school, from where and at the end he retired as a distinguished scientist and also its director. After 3 years after that, he was a DAE Radharamana Fellow and then held Homi Bhabha Chair position at NIAS for 3 years. And he is a fellow of National Academy of Sciences in India and also Indian National Science Academy. He, of course, held various visiting positions at universities in the US, Germany, Canada, and South Africa. And is also known for his work on electromagnetic probes of quark gluon plasma, propagation of charm quarks in UGP, breakup of light projectiles in Coulomb and nuclear field of nuclei and medium modification of nuclear interactions. And his books on climate change and energy options, as well as art and science of managing public risks, and also more importantly, the books of stories for children to explain concepts of science in a very simple terms, obviously meant for children, were very, very well received. And those of you who, if you have not read, especially the books that he wrote for children, I think they're very, very popular. And how one can take the science to younger, members of the society. I think that is an important task that I think last few years I've been seeing him. He was very active on that front. So on those few words, now I would like to invite Dr. Srivastava, who's going to talk on how long is the long path to developed India. Sir, it's over to you.
Yeah, so thank you, Dr. Satyanarayan, for this very kind invitation to come and talk here. This talk or this work, with the references given here, arose out of our frustration, depression, anxiety, and unhappiness at the state of things we are in. So, we would, both of us, Professor Ramurthy, who is about 10 years senior to me, we would sit, and he was Secretary, Department of Science and Technology at one time, and we would discuss what is the problem, why are we so far behind? And it is from these discussions that this has come. So we have tried to see step by step what is it that we have done which is incorrect or inadequate. So there is the alternative title which you can read. It says, "Kab tak ye aankhein tarsengi," which means that how long are we going to wait? So most of you must have seen it. This is a economic contour of world economy done by Angus Madison, and you can see that in first AD to about 1700 AD, India and China accounted about 30% each of the world economy. And then industrial revolution took place. Once industrial revolution took place, the means of production which were purely manual, and because of which India and China were able to produce a lot more and contribute to world economy, they lost that advantage. Somewhere here is, and the Western world started going up. This is World War I, this is independent India. What I would like to say here is that even though both of them started going down, they remained quite together, and I'll come back to this again. India and China. China has been rising much faster, whereas India is not rising that fast. But let's look at it as GDP per capita, and then you will see till about 1700 to about 1990, India and China economy is very similar. And only after 1990s, Chinese economy is overtaking India. This is the third industrial revolution, which gave such a large fillip to Western nations. So first thing which we realize is science and technology matter. Okay. So because I may go off track and start losing track of time, so let me first tell you the right in the beginning. India came out of centuries of colonial rule about 75 years ago. It opted for a democratic form of government, and it also opted for science and technology for development. Well, India has been able to develop and build considerable science and technology strengths during these decades, and has even addressed many of its monumental problems. I will come to it again. The economy of the country continues to remain that of a developing economy. In contrast, China has been able to lift itself out of this community of developing nation into developed nations in a short span of 2 years. Okay, so we argue that it has been made possible by China's increasing investments in higher education, research and development, and technology-driven entrepreneurship. We shall also see that India's investments in R&D and education have been subcritical as compared to not only developed countries but also to China. I'm leaving aside India's expenditure on health sector, which is definitely very poor. And we finally argue that India needs to augment these, as the Chinese experience has shown the return on these things is very quick and very rapid. So let's just look at some of the things, statistics. In August 15, 1947, when we became independent, we had a population about 340 million. 85% of them lived in villages and depended directly or indirectly on agriculture. Our GDP was just about 2.7 lakh crores. That, by the way, is the unit in which scams take place in India. India had a literacy level of about 12%, much lower for women, and life expectancy of 37 years. India had just about 20 lakhs to 30 lakh students in 20 universities and 500 colleges spread across the country. You also know that, let's just first count our blessings, though. We chose democracy for governance, as we said. We chose science and technology for development. And most importantly, we already had exposure to English language and Western education system and a long tradition of science. We gave a high priority to education, scientific research, and technology for development. So these things you don't know very well, so I'm not going to tell this. J.C. Bose, Sahab, S.N. Bose, C.V. Raman, S. Ramanujam, all of them contributed. Today, India has a very robust school and undergraduate education base. Please remember, note that I have said robust base, not quality of the education. Okay, literacy rate now is 78% and life expectancy is 70 years. By the way, even if it is 99%, there is no reason to be happy, because even with 99% literacy, we shall have 1 crore Indians who are illiterate. And that is not a small number. So till we reach the full 100% literacy, we should not start feeling proud. Okay. By 2021, India had 1.2 million primary schools, more than 150,000 secondary schools, and about 140,000 higher secondary schools. By 2021, India had 263 million students enrolled in the standards 1 to 12. They are very, very pleasing numbers. By 2021, we also had 15,000 ITIs, from where about 2.7 million trainees graduate every year in about 150 trades. However, we are told by industrialists that they need 3 times more ITI trainees. And we don't have any provision to provide this trained manpower. Till 1947, postgraduate education and research was considered elitist. I will not give you the name, you can look for it, but someone called it mentally decadent indulgence of the rich, or dimagi ayasi, as we say it in Hindi. But after independence, we have many R&D institutions with focused mandates. TIFR is one of them, institutes of technology, institutes of management, central and state universities, and more recently, science education and research. By 2021, we have more than 41 million students across 1,100 universities, 44,000 colleges, and 11,000 standalone institutions. So what I'm crying about? Let me also give you some more examples. Infrastructure of electricity, roads, railways, etc. Electricity production capacity in 1947 was 1 gigawatt. Electricity was known in only some of the big cities. Villages did not know electricity. Now, electricity production is 400 gigawatts and rising. Now, every village has been electrified. We had 20,000 kilometers of national highways and 400,000 kilometers of road network in 1947. Now we have 150,000 kilometers of modern multi-lane national highway and road network of 6.2 million kilometers. We had a colonial network of just 54,000 kilometers fragmented into broad gauge, narrow gauge, meter gauge, and mostly single track and mostly powered by coal. Now we have 126,000 kilometers of railway network, mostly electrified, almost entirely broad gauge, generally with multiple track and often along with the freight corridor. Enormous technology upgradation has also taken place in rolling stock. Let's recall some of our good feel factors, success stories. Green Revolution. When I was growing up in Allahabad, 1960s, one of the first things we would do around 3 or 4 in the morning was to go and stand in the queue in front of a ration shop and start waiting for ration to arrive. Often by 8 or so, the shop owner will tell that ration has not arrived and they came back empty-handed. Okay. There is a particular story that during Christmas, India had nothing to eat. And Lyndon B. Johnson's daughter pleaded with him that, Daddy, don't you think that we should send some food to poor Indians so that they can have a little better Christmas? From that, we have come to a country where there is surplus food supply. Then we have White Revolution. India is one of the largest producers of milk and milk products in the world. In fact, the largest. India has also emerged as leading producer of pulses, fruits, vegetables, and fish. We call it Blue Revolution. Yeah. India has established heavy industries during second and third 5-year plan. First 5-year plan, we did not establish any heavy industry. We set up steel plants, fertilizer plants, and plants to make machine tools, HMT in particular, and heavy electrical equipment. And we are now completely self-sufficient in the pharmaceuticals. This is a wonderful story because it was largely dependent on imports of drugs and pharmaceuticals. Again, I will tell you, in 1964 or so, a rich neighbor's daughter got typhoid, and they purchased a bottle of crocin for 75 rupees, which will come to something like 750 or 7,000 rupees today. From that, we have come to a stage when we are buying crocin for about 10 or 20 paise, right? So generic drugs and vaccines at affordable cost and vaccine production in late 90s through recombinant DNA technologies for diseases like hepatitis B and rotavirus at affordable costs are gift of India. When, because India provided AIDS medicine now at just 20 cents per tablet for one day, which are being sold for hundreds of dollars per tablet. CIPLA, which made it possible. For that, people say that in Africa, CIPLA is a temple and Dr. Hamid is God. Yeah, India eradicated smallpox. And I almost died of smallpox. It is my grandmother, of course, believes that it was her prayer to some Sitla temple near Allahabad that I survived. India eradicated smallpox and polio and is making rapid progress in the elimination of tuberculosis. We developed affordable vaccine for the recent COVID pandemic and a nasal vaccine, the only one of its kind. We produced, distributed, and even donated large quantities of vaccine. Space and nuclear technology. When India started setting up space and nuclear technologies, we were ridiculed. They told, these are technologies for the rich. So you need bullock cars, better bullock cars, not space and nuclear reactors. But by now, we have launch vehicles, communication satellites, astrophysics satellites, navigational satellites, remote sensing satellites, which are giving you enough warnings for droughts, floods, cyclones, fisheries, and forests. Of course, you all know that we launched Chandrayaan 1, 2, 3. Mars orbiter mission has gone to Mars. Aditya L1 in just 6 or 7 days will be reaching its parking place. We are on the way to launch Gaganyaan and put Indians in space. We have commercial launch of vehicles for other nations at very competitive costs. We operate 22 nuclear reactors with a total capacity of about 7,000 megawatt, and we plan to raise it to 23,000 megawatts by 2031. The three-stage nuclear program is completely under control. And we have, of course, worked hard in accelerator technology. We have K130, K500 cyclotrons, 2.5 GeV synchrotrons, number of LINX, both in Calcutta and Delhi, both in Bombay and Delhi. Yeah. So what is my problem? My problem is, before proceeding, let me also tell research. If you talk to some of the people of the older generation, they will tell you that they used to scavenge electronics from scraps in Chor Bazar of Bombay. From there, we have detected atmospheric neutrinos in gold mines. We have a very vibrant program in nuclear physics in the country. We are building detectors and participated in Fermilab in discovery of bottom and top quark and tau neutrino. We built detectors to be used at CERN and participation in discoveries of weak neutral currents, W and Z mesons, number of neutrinos, and more recently Higgs boson and quark-gluon plasma. We are participating in building Large Hadron Collider and ALICE and CMS experiments, Isolde experiment, RD50, 50 or 51. And we are now associate member of CERN. We are participating in ITER. We are participating in FAIR. We are participating in LIGO. We are participating in TMT. We are participating in square kilometer array. We have constructed upgraded scores of astronomical laboratories in the country like GMRT, upgraded GMRT, Hanley, Arias, etc., etc. And we have not yet given up the dreams of INO. And of course, we made supercomputers with massive parallel processing. Now, all these things were done under the shadow of technology denial. This, please do not forget. Okay. In 1991, the Indian economy opened up. And what happened? What happened is that Indian industries did not collapse under global competition, as widely predicted by Chatterjee and wisecrack experts. Several Indian industries became internationally competitive. Yeah. So to give you some examples, the automobile industry of India, which used to have just one ambassador car, I have used it for years, which stopped every 10 kilometers and had to be repaired every 5 kilometers. Okay, but you also got absolutely uneducated mechanics who could start it. So now automobile industry is producing two-wheelers, three-wheelers, passenger cars, commercial vehicles, and even electric vehicles. More importantly, it employs about 30 million people directly or indirectly and contributes more than 7% up to the overall GDP. And it exports 21.5 billion USD. And India is now a massive hub of business processing business process outsourcing, a formidable IT industry with footprints across the world. And again, this patriotic class of India would not hesitate to make fun of our IT industry. Why? They will call them our IT coolies. But this IT industry employs over 5 million people in high-paying jobs. It exports $250 billion. Export earnings are $250 billion per year. Our oil import bill is $230 billion. It's more than the oil bill. And these so-called IT coolies, these much abused, much maligned IT coolies, have kept Indian economy free from troubles of oil prices. And what did they export? They exported only knowledge. Okay? India's resilience to natural calamities like droughts, floods, cyclones, earthquakes, and tsunamis have increased substantially over the decades, partly because we have pre-disaster warning capabilities using satellites, and partly that after that fateful tsunami, we have a post-disaster rescue and relief capabilities. Every year now we have cyclones and hardly single death. This is not a small thing. But, and this but is a huge but, our share of international trade has remained low at about 1.8%. Our GDP was about 3 trillion USD, but please look at GDP per capita to know prosperity of our common people. India continues to remain in the committee of developing nations. India aspires to become a developed nation in the next 2 decades in 2047. That is 100 years after we became independent. Okay. Well, it is a welcome sign of hope. Most of you will be there around in 2047, but I will be gone. As they say in Hindi, आह को चाहिए एक उम्र असर होने तक. As I say, I will not be there, okay? So in view of this, we ask a question. Is science and technology-based development not fast enough to lift a developing country into a developed nation within 1 generation? And in order to understand this, we look at China. Why? Peoples of the Republic of China has a similar population as ours. It has a similar colonial history. It has a similar great past, as I showed you. It was founded on October 1, 1949, almost at the same time as the Indian Republic. It lost 20 million people in Japanese invasion and suffered vast devastation. It started the Soviet model of governance, 5-year plans, heavy industry, etc. It suffered political and social upheavals caused by the Cultural Revolution and the Great Famine, caused again by some stupid argument. Okay. Chinese economy essentially followed that of a typical developing economy for nearly 4 decades and remained conspicuously similar in magnitude to that of India. And then this happened. This is India's GDP from 1960 to 2020. China GDP, USA GDP. You can see till about 1990, they are almost identical. And then Chinese economy goes up. So the rest of the talk is to try to understand how this, what has happened, what happened, how did it happen, why did it happen? Okay. And you see 4 arrows, 863, TARS, 211, and 985. These are policy interventions. So they had 4 critical policy interventions. The first one was Program 863. In China, when a program is implemented, generally it is not given any name. It is not named after some leader. It is 86 is the year and 3 is the March when it started. So program 863 was started in 1986 to stimulate research and development in 3 strategic sectors: nuclear, space, and missile defense. Then there was program TORCH. This is one name given differently. 1988 to create ecosystems and infrastructure necessary to support innovation and entrepreneurship. As a result, the 3 strategic sectors had a very rapid, substantial growth under this program. And then they came to realize that their contribution to generation of new knowledge by way of publications in refereed journals, the generation of intellectual property, and the growth of Chinese industries outside the strategic sectors remained only marginal. Then they implemented Project 211. This is something slightly different. In 1995, to strengthen education and research in about 100 institutions of higher learning in critical disciplinary areas. And Project 985 in 1998 to create world-class universities as a national priority for the 21st century to enhance the capacity of high-level manpower in the frontier fields of science and technology. And the result, this is the number of science and technology graduates in 2000. And after these interventions, the number of science and technology graduates shoot up like that. India also had a rising number of science and technology graduates, much more than China. But if you look at number of PhDs in science and technology and compare that for China and India, India's number of PhDs is very small compared to China. Yeah, this number, China has now overtaken USA in number of PhDs in science and technology.
Related to the fact that, I'm sorry, you may have to ask this question. Is it related to the fact that in 80s, even during Mao's time, it was actually argued that Americans, when they opened an economy, they would like to have 100,000 Chinese every year leaving for higher education in the US. So this was the state policy.
Yes.
That's not the case in India. People went from IITs only or big cities. So that actually, allowed them to have more PhDs 30 years down the line.
So all that I'm telling is that this was started and they poured in money to support their education.
In 80s.
Yeah.
We started much later in the sense of our economy,
equality
and poverty was our motto.
I'm going to show you numbers till that we never started. Or let me not preempt my talk. Okay. This is the growth in number of researchers per million. India, it has remained 190 to 220, 250, I think. China, 400 to about 1200 or 1300. But please remember, this is researchers per million. Okay. This is the number of researchers per million and GDP per capita in university. This is no-brainer, as they say, as kids these days try to say, that if you have more researchers per million, your GDP per capita will go up. And that is what we are seeing. India's number is here, China number is here, and Western nations numbers are there. Huh?
Correlation is not causation.
Yeah, we can say that. Okay. Yeah, keep seeing this. Yeah. It is also, this figure is often given to tell, look how far is USA, where is China. This for 25 years from 1996 to 21, and India is very low. So India production is very low. Scientific papers. Though if you look at by year, in 2022, China has overtaken USA. But if you look at number of researchers per million,
it would be interesting to see that. So that figure per active researcher or something like that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sir, 6 महीना काम किया, कुछ तो किया होगा. Okay. So this is number of publications per researcher. And then the Indian researchers are neither very good. They are comparable. In fact, they are even better than China. And how do you look at a quality of a publication? By looking at the number of citations, beloved of especially condensed matter people, because they get a lot more citations than nuclear physicists. So this is citation per document. India's citations and Chinese citation are not very different. And these numbers are neither very low nor very high. Okay. So it is quite clear to me that citations and the productivity of individual researcher of India and quality of an average researcher in India is same as anywhere else. Okay. This is science and technology publications per million in 2020. China, India, you can say. Okay, and other countries. Number of patents filed in 2020, China, India.
That one, patents filed per researcher?
No. No. That is the country. And this is the researcher per million in R&D in some selected country. This is India. Somewhere here is China. This is Denmark, South Korea, Sweden, and all. So all yes.
Researchers in different form of PhD holders, the researcher. Earlier we used PhD holders.
PhD holders are as the World Bank defines it as full-time researchers. People, yeah, who are employed full-time in research.
Graduate students will be considered as researchers.
Well, if you use the same thing, same model for everybody, that should be fine. Yeah.
Sorry. Can you please use the mic? So, we have to put down. I think it's all. Hey, can you
So I think these are all OECD countries, developed countries already, right? Most of them.
Yeah, these are. I can, if I put all the countries, this figure will become unmanageable. So these are mostly the same countries for which I was showing the other data.
But it's better to compare India with a non-OECD country as well, right?
You want to become a developed country, or you want to become a country with huge amount of oil?
We are not yet a developed country. We are still a developing country. So I think still our comparison should be within the same scale, and we should go there as well. I think, in my personal opinion, this is not a very fair comparison because these are all OECD countries with a strong educational base and all that.
So right? What is wrong in having a strong educational base?
We can come to that later after the presentation.
if
They are perhaps not contributing to India's economy.
Are you considering this in US or in US?
No, I'm only considering them in India, those who are working in India. Okay, so this is growth of GDP per capita. You have seen this, but it is this figure which you people will be able to understand better. This is the phase space of researcher per million population versus GDP per capita. India is occupying a very small part of the phase space. But China has filled up the phase space by increasing the number of researchers per million. And then come to this. This is R&D expenditure as a percentage of GDP. India's expenditure has remained at 0.6% to 0.8%. China's expenditure as a percentage of GDP has continuously gone up. But that is not the real figure. The real figure is R&D expenditure in actual mullah. Yeah, this is China, this is India, and these are the two projects. And the money starts pouring in, and their R&D expenditure keeps going up. With 6 to 7 times more expenditure on R&D, we don't expect China and India to be comparable. It will be a very unfair comparison. There is one other thing which I debated with myself whether to show this or not. It's there in the paper. If you look at only the R&D expenditure, USA, if you look at it, it is 2.6%. But out of that 2.6%, only 0.3% comes from government, 1.9% comes from business, and others, donations and all, comes to 0.4%. In China, out of that, 1.3% comes from government, 0.6% comes from China and others. In India, the only expenditure comes from government, very little from business. If we are in DA, let me also tell about nuclear power capacity. This figure should have been earlier. We built our first nuclear reactor in 1970, and now we are somewhere there at 7,000 megawatt. In China, built its first nuclear reactor in 1992, and they already are at 53,000 megawatt, and they are making another 23,000 megawatt. This is Indian Institutes of Technology. We started Kharagpur, Delhi, Madras, Bombay. By 1965, IITs. And then we did not do anything for almost 30 years. Then one and one and one. Only now we have some more IITs. What was the result of this? A total of only 3,000 seats or 2,650 seats. These are too few. The country of India's population has only 2,000 or 3,000, 2,750 students who can go to IIT. There are too few seats. It led to brutal competition. A huge number of equally deserving students were left out. It led to tuitions, coaching classes, loss of childhood for students who were left with no hobbies and no games, left to desperation, despondence, depression, frustration, suicides. Every year we hear that. Most importantly, it also gave rise to a system where IITs went out of the reach of poorer section of societies. Then it also led to growth of private institutions, many of which have questionable teaching and training standards and charge enormous tuition and capitation fees. Okay. Central universities, these are some historical data. The first central university is 1969. We opened our first Central University in 1970 or 69 or so, GNU. And then one by one, very slowly, only now we have started opening. And most of central universities, many of them are just by converting the existing universities into central universities. Many of them are operating from hard campuses. They don't even have the faculty strength. They don't have students. And I went to Central University in Jharkhand. They were operating from Panchayati Bhavan or institutes of management. I mean, modern industry requires inputs from all over the world and requires inputs in a very orderly manner for speedy implementation. This requires very good modern management. Just two institutes of management, one in Lucknow, one in Ahmedabad in 1960. Then for 10 years, nothing, 10, 15 years, nothing. One opens up. And then again we go to sleep. Only now we have started opening.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to add to that. Perhaps can this be because in 1990, profit is considered as a curse or a bad word.
Yeah.
And so you can't really, because that was the mentality of the socialism. And
Yes, I am. Yes, आपकी बात बिल्कुल सत्य है. However, I cannot control politics. We can contribute to science and technology, and that is all that I will contribute. Yeah. Okay. The situation was and continues to be much worse for medical education. First AIMS was opened in 1956, and the next one only in 2012. Now there are 23 AIMS, but many of them are AIMS only in the name. There is a medical college very close to where I work now. And the capitation fee for admission to MBBS is exactly 1 crore rupee. I am so very relieved that my daughter, who had always dreamt of becoming a doctor, did not have to become a doctor because I would not have been able to afford it. So what I am trying to say with all these examples is that India did everything right, but only thoda thoda, only little. We did everything right. We were on the right track, but we were always subcritical. And what is the result? We are sending 465,000 students to USA, 183,000 students to Canada, 164,000 students to UAE, and like that. And they are taking away, spending 35 to 45 billion USD every year as tuition fee.
China in this, we are not sending much to China.
Well, this was given in the year 2022 when all of them came back to India, right? And this number is going to double in a few years. Okay. Now, earlier, people mostly used to go for PhD. And now you can see that a large number have started going at undergraduate level. And what are they going to study? Engineering, math and computer science, business and management. Just those critical areas for which we refuse to have enough number of quality institutes. So all our students are going to study engineering, math and computer science and business and management, where we should have opened a lot more institutes much earlier. Okay. This thing, okay. So let us talk about another aspect which I did not cover much technology business incubation. All of you know Maharani Ahilyabai Holkar. When she took over the kingdom of Maheshwar, she found that people were very poor there. So what she did, she designed saris using motifs of her fort in Maheshwar. Then she invited weavers from Mandu and Surat and gave them silk yarn and gold and silver thread and got these saris made. Then she presented these saris to the nobility and popularized them. Finally, she got the people of Maheshwar trained in the art of making these saris. And this training provides jobs to 10,000 families even today. Technology business incubation, which is a big word today, this literally uneducated lady implemented it 300 years ago in India. Technology business incubation was suggested by United Nations, both in India and China, both in 1987. This is the incubation in China. This is the incubation in India, 254,000. And for both of them, the advisors were, United Nations advisors were the same person, Rustam Lal Kaka and his colleagues. Rustam Lal Kaka is now full-time in China. This is his book, which you can read. What are the steps here? But we should celebrate success, right? Once in a while, बहुत depression हो गया था हमको. This is export of Indian pharmaceutical industry. It's $20 billion now. The difference is that they are using a large, plowing back a large percentage of their earnings into R&D. Others are not. So for nearly 5 decades after they emerged as newly independent nations, both the India and Chinese economies remain neck to neck and comparable to typical developing economies. China has been charting a new path of rapid economic growth since the beginning of the 21st century. This has been made possible by the strengthening of its educational and entrepreneurial infrastructure. And we strongly feel that India has to fix its educational pipeline and increase the number of S&T personnels to the level of China and other developed nations. Yeah. We know everything, but I don't know why we don't implement it. We know that a manufacturing economy reaches its fullest potential only when it is innovation-driven, or you call knowledge economy. China has been benefiting from the bootstrap effect of increasing GDP and the increasing investments in research. And I have already told that their GDP is much larger, so they are able to spend much more on R&D. Okay. So our recommendations are very simple. I'm almost over. Just in time, I suppose, that India needs to fix its educational pipeline and bring more students into a higher education and research so that number of R&D personnel per million population in India grows to levels comparable to developed countries and double it by within 5 to 10 years. We also recommend that the faculty strength, even in our premier universities, hovers around 500 to 1,000. And it has been stagnant at this level for several decades. Universities in most developed countries, and many of you have been educated in the West, you know that that they have much larger faculty strength and much larger student strength. And the state universities and colleges have not filled up their regular vacancies for decades, which severely impacts their education. It also exposes our students who obtain their PhDs to go from postdoc to postdoc and remain unemployed for almost 10 years after completing their PhD. So if we do not take corrective steps in education and research immediately, our much wanted demographic advantage, we are continuously telling that we have a great demographic advantage. But this demographic advantage, if it remains uneducated, and especially uneducated in science and technology, this will become a burden, not an advantage. And thus, I will leave. Oh my God, this thing is gone now. Excuse me. India needs to strengthen its ecosystem for innovation and entrepreneurship so that India's S&T strength turns into economic strength. And entrepreneurship training and business incubation must be made integral part of education. And we should find a way that industries are encouraged to participate in and in nurturing entrepreneurship training and business incubation. Finally, we have a dream. We have a dream which does not let me sleep. Let us sleep. It was given to us by our forefathers who fought for freedom. And this dream is that is it too much to dream of a developed and prosperous India before we depart? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Srivastava, for very nice compilation, the various metrics, which of course you very nicely brought in the basic data, which opened up a lot of useful conclusions, but also more importantly, the recommendations, the proposals that you brought at the end also makes all of us to think what is the direction. Of course, it's very clear from the view graphs itself that we are factor of 7s and 10s and much worse. But I think as I kind of began today's deliberations by saying maybe the end of the last working day of the year is something which to ponder about what is in store for us in future. There are quite a few questions on the Zoom and on the YouTube, but I also see a lot of raised hands. So yeah.
Well, in your plot of number of researchers versus, I think, GDP, could it be interchanged, Y and X, because what is cause and what is effect?
It can be done. It can be done, but if you have more researchers, GDP will go up. If you have more GDP, you can support more researchers.
Yeah, that is true, but GDP has many other factors rather than only, it may be just a correlation.
There is a particular reason why I did not compare India with Kuwait, right? Somebody was telling that. Yeah, we did not compare because Kuwait has huge quantity of oil. I did not compare India with China, with Japan. Japan has no industry. It is only purely knowledge based. We did not compare it with South Korea. It is only knowledge economy. I compare it with India, with China, for the simple reason that we have same population, similar history, similar kind of distribution of minerals.
So I don't want to bring politics, but the fact is what you said, the democratic setup versus the Russian model. Like, let's say if China would have the democratic setup or India would have been the other side, which obviously not. So mean, have you done some kind of simulation or some kind of thought experiment
Yes,
that
we have thought about it.
has the political system has any role to play that we are going in a elephant speed rather a dragon flying?
Perhaps that is one question which everybody asks, and we have thought about it. If we don't, you can open up the economy. You can get all kind of technology from USA and Europe. I've been told that Chinese economy went up because Americans and USA, they transferred all their manufacturing to China. But China would not have been able to handle it if they had not spent money on education and R&D. It is their preparedness, and the preparedness is started. Yes, one thing which I did not tell you is that those later two policy interventions, those were proposed, those were invited. Kya kare? And some people gave this recommendation, and the recommendation was cleared within 3 days. That was perhaps the only advantage China had. But please do not forget that in a democracy, people think freely. That opens up their creativity, not in a communist, not in a dictatorial country. So we are actually in a better advantage, more advantage, because we can think freely, we can express ourselves, we can even find out what is kya gadbad hai, kya theek nahi hai, and take corrective steps. In a dictatorship, be it communist or otherwise, you are not free to tell. Your creativity is not the best. So I would not think that politics plays that much role. It is the educational preparedness of people in R&D and education which is making it possible. And that is what, as they say, me thinks.
Yeah. I just would like to, one of the recommendations that he gave was increasing the students in higher education, right? And that again brings back to our low base in education. I think that even the initial slides, we focused on how India has had a higher education setup, including AIMS and all that. There was this thing. But there was enough criticism to say that our primary education levels were not up to the mark.
Yes.
Right? From independence till now, in fact, recent ASA reports also suggest that our engineering and people from STEM are not able to do basic calculations, majority of them. This is what the ASA report suggests. So higher education is seen as at least top of the pyramid or middle of the pyramid. Foundation is the base primary level. We won't have higher education till we have a great foundation, right? So instead of going directly towards higher education, I think, and R&D, there should be enough.
The two are not mutually exclusive. First thing, everybody knows what is wrong with our primary education. Everybody knows what is wrong with our lower education. What people do not realize is that at most 3% of people who do PhD, they go to business processing on TBIs. Just 3% all over the world. And this is the same number in India also. 3% of people who do PhD take to this TBI. Education has to be improved at all levels. But it is the people who will create new knowledge, who will improve your economy.
So should it?
Yeah.
Should it be a top-down approach or should it be a bottom-up approach?
It should be simultaneous.
Funding can increase everywhere at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They are not mutually exclusive.
So
Yeah.
you had one metric which was, I think, called science and technology educated people, where you said that if you look at a total number of science and technology educated people, then India and China perhaps have similar numbers. But when you go to PhD level, we fall way short. So what is happening to these science and education, science and technology educated people in India who are not going to do a PhD? Presumably, one would think that they go to industry and
they
would play a part in increasing GDP of India, but somehow that's not happening. So
it's part of it. And what we find is that these bachelors, they are not creating any new techniques. They are not creating any new knowledge. They are trained to do things. They can solve an integral. What to do with that integral, they don't know. It is only when they go to research, only when they do a PhD. I'm talking about a good PhD. Okay, only when they do research, they create something new, they defend their papers, they defend their ideas, will they start contributing, really. Otherwise, they will be very good workers.
I think part of the answer to this could be given by our Dean Administration, who should know what is the minimum requirement for various kinds of posts. And lots of non-academic, non-creative posts, administrative, non-creative posts, now require bachelor's degrees. Right?
There's one question at the back, and I have to take.
Can we say that active researchers working in India is less because there are less demand in India, or there may be some other reason?
अरे साहब, ना तो यूनिवर्सिटी में नौकरी दे रहे हैं, ना आप इंस्टीट्यूट्स में नौकरी दे रहे हैं. And some time ago, I was talking to somebody from a certain very famous institutes in South, and the person was lamenting that in his division there used to be 170 scientists just 4 or 5 years ago, and now there are only 70, and 40 of them are going to retire. We are not filling up our vacancies, and we should have many more. Does country of India's size has just 2 pelletrons? I will talk only about nuclear physics because that is what I understand. Only 2 pelletrons and 2 cyclotrons in Calcutta, nothing else. Entire South India, there is not a single pelletron. Entire South India, and in the country of India's size, we have just 1 synchrotron. Why shouldn't there be many more? We need lot more institutes with lot more research in all.
You also made another point. Sorry, you also made another point about.
I think he was not finished. Yeah?
Why I am saying this, because if you see at ISRO or car manufacturing factories, then there are no lack of researchers. But in other sectors, there are no demands. So I think there are no researchers.
That's not correct. I mean, I can.
That is not factually correct. ISRO would be very happy to have 5 to 6 times more people. ISRO would be very happy to have its budget increased by factor of 10. Many of these projects which you are seeing happening now could have been completed 10 years, 15 years earlier if they had funding. I am now working with people at our institute. There are a number of people who are retired from ISRO, and they keep telling every day, ये सब तो हमने किया हुआ था, करके रखा हुआ था, पैसे नहीं थे, वो अब हो रहा है.
So in the same context, you also mentioned lots of universities, lots of colleges who don't fill up positions. There are lots of vacant positions lying there, as a result of which people who finish their PhDs do not get jobs.
10,000 rupees a month.
I think Rudra has it.
Yeah.
In China,
or US, you have a major part of the funding for science is coming from industry, like from private sectors. So, what do you think in India, how the situation is going to change?
That is what I tried to tell. You see, all our industries get huge amount of subsidies. I can tell you of a particular aluminum industry in a particular state called UP, who were given electricity at 2 paisa per unit for 50 years. Is that not a subsidy? They get subsidized land, they get tax holidays. Why can't you people force them to spend a part of their earning on research? Our industrialists would like to buy technology. Any technology you get, you know very well. This is a trivial thing I'm telling. I feel bad telling it because it's such a trivial thing. Any technology which you buy is already an obsolete technology. Let them spend some money and develop some technology here. And you have worked in Western countries, and you see how much funding comes from private industries. I was in Stony Brook. The Department of Mathematics gets most of its money from US Navy because they were working on cryptology at one time. So like that, our people don't want to spend money on R&D. And wherever they have spent, they have reaped great. That is the reason I gave this example of automobile and the pharmaceuticals. So we have to find a way. And I have not studied it carefully, but I understand that NRF or NSF, which Government of India is planning, they are telling they will give 10,000 crores and 40,000 crores has to come from industry.
But the ecosystem is not there.
You to raise money. They don't expect industry to pay money. Now that something has to change there.
You had follow-up comment question just now?
No. I just wanted to add a caveat to that pharmaceutical research. Although the pharmaceutical companies are putting a lot of money, the R&D that is happening is for the generic medication, not innovative or new medication.
No, that is not quite true.
That ratio is fairly skewed for pharmaceutical companies because you find out the number of generic medicines which have been discovered or not discovered but invented by these companies like Cipla, etc. over the last 30 years is huge in number as compared to the number of what is it called, the
new medicines.
That's where the difference is also for pharmaceutical.
Vaccine.
So that's what I'm saying. That's one example. You look at the number of formulae which have been copied and made generic, and compared to that number of formulas which are invented.
Is that there is scope for a lot of improvement.
That's what I'm saying.
No problem.
So even pharmaceutical companies is not a stellar example of lot of investment in R&D because that is not the correct kind of R&D that is going.
They are doing. कुछ तो कर रहे हैं. We were looking for straws to hold on, and that is what we found.
Sir, there were a few comments from Sudhir Raniwala, who is on YouTube. One of them, in fact, what Sarindu, I think, not about some time back. He says the claim, in bracket claimed, correlation between GDP/capita and research is not convincing. Further, any correlation does not prove causation. I think that is what kind of mentioned. And the second comment is there is a serious cultural issue becoming only worse now, in my opinion, humble opinion that is. Numbers that you showed may at best guide the eye and at worst deceive. These are
comments. I don't think that these are questions.
No, these are comments. Both are comments I mentioned to you, but I thought I should read that out for you. Okay. Are there any questions from the... Oops, still more are there. Okay.
You showed that the government spending is at a level about 0.65% and has remained the same for many, many years, irrespective of what kind of government came and went. It has not changed.
So, not only that, I did not tell you something there. I deliberately did not tell. Because government after government keeps telling, we have raised the R&D expenditure because
of inflation.
GDP is going up a little bit, so
the
that
percentage
goes up a
also
little
isn't the
bit.
same. So the point is that it looks like there is a complacency in the government that we can get a go ahead without doing this. The need for improving knowledge based and R&D, it doesn't exist. The reason I'm asking you this is that, is this connected with the fact that we have had some success in the IT sector? And people think that having that success is enough to keep people happy without having to invest largely in science and technology. So I just wanted to see if you thought of whether that is a correlation.
What to say? You see, name one IT product which has come out from India.
But people are earning money.
So, we had a talk by the person who made the LCA, Light Combat Aircraft. He said, you want to earn $1 billion? You send more than maybe 1 million tons of weight. Or you sell a software like Pegasus, where no product is used, no chemical is used, no metal is used, only your brain. I'm not telling that Pegasus is a good example, but it is an example. It is an example of knowledge economy. So even though I said nice things about IT industry, but name one IT, or even after so many years with 5 million people working, we have not come up with our own.
That's not the question is the fact that people are getting employment in the IT industry. And that is keeping a section of people happy because they can.
That is not enough.
I know it's not enough. That's it. Is that a reason for the government's complacency?
That I don't know. I do not know how the minds of a government works, and that is why I gave that couplet from Jigar Muradabadi that politicians will do what they will do. We can only give a message of hope.
Yeah, just two questions. No. So yours will be the last question. So I hope you have it. Okay, so one exception.
Hello. Yeah. So as sir said that many people are happy living in like IT jobs and all. So I just wanted to share one thing that many of my friends who have completed their degrees from very good research universities like IITs in various IITs, Madras and Bombay. Most of those people are not doing any kind of core job in their own field. They are doing jobs in banks or like product management and something which are very high paying job. But they're not going into research. And primarily people from research universities who are getting their degrees from something like IITs were expected to go into expected to do PhDs and developing something new. But they're not doing it. Is it because research is less rewarding in India? Like many of the people who are from non-NET background and doing their PhDs from state universities or some other universities are not even getting stipends and all. So that's why people are not doing more research and getting into PhD.
Yes, this fact is known, known to all. And I think during lunch or during tea, we were just discussing this. And one of your colleagues, Pratap Rai Chaudhary, said, but these people are making, at the end of all this, all that these people are happy about is the amount of money they make. They are not happy because they are doing something new. Okay. So if somebody wants to earn money, let them do. We have, you see, it is well known that when our boys started coming out from IITs in 1960s and all, the country's atmosphere was not good enough to accommodate and take advantage of their expertise. And that is where we left out. लेकिन वो तो बात बहुत पीछे की बात है. Now you are open. Now at least you improve. That is all that we are trying to say. At that time, There was license, permit, all these things were there. And they found it suffocating. But now we don't have license and permit. And now you can see a lot of them are doing very well. Like, some young kids in Bangalore have started making satellites, which are being projected. So I have great faith in people of India. I have no reason to think that our people are anyway inferior to anybody else. We have to give them opportunities. We have to train them. We have to train them. And education पे जितना खर्च करेंगे उसका 10 गुना आपको मिलेगा. Like whatever you spend on health, if the government of India had not spent that money in inoculating huge number of people against COVID, we would have been suffering and suffering and suffering. People would have died, economy would have collapsed. If that does not convince people that our health sector has to be supported strongly, then I don't know what can support. Yeah.
Yeah, I have just a question that, yeah, I assume even the model, whatever is saying, suppose right, how does this message goes to the people who take decisions?
Again, I will quote the same comment which I left, that उनका जो फर्ज है अहले सियासत जाने, मेरा पैगाम है मोहब्बत जहां तक पहुंचे. As scientists, as researchers are dead scientists and dead researchers, or as a colleague of mine said, people with expired medicine. We are expired medicines. Retired people are expired medicines. We can only talk about it. And we hope that somebody will listen. Okay? But if people like Satya remain kind to me, I can go and talk about it. Only thing is that I don't have any funding, so I cannot travel on my own. But and you see, I mean, if enough awareness of this is created in the country by means of writing, by means of talking, then I'm quite sure that in a democratic country, people can put pressure. People have to put pressure. It is part, yeah.
Unfortunately, the sharing has stopped, but you had a two-dimensional plot. I think x-axis was perhaps number of researchers and y-axis was perhaps GDP. And you showed the tracking, you tracked the trajectory of India and China.
Yes.
In the Chinese trajectory, there were two big kings. And I was wondering if one of them corresponded to any other intervention that you mentioned.
That kick was because of, I think the financial year in China is not from 1st January to, because of some time step, not because of any other reason. It was just some time step.
I also saw that.
Yeah, I thought of it.
Yes.
It was some time step.
Hello.
Really the last question. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, since your presentation hinted at a lot of numbers, I just wanted to ask one. Okay. Since your presentation hinted at a lot of numbers, I had a personal question. So do you feel in order to attract more R&D investments, we should shift towards more applied and translational research rather than fundamental?
First thing, I don't think that there is applied research is different from fundamental research. From fundamental research also, a huge number of applied activities come out. I'm only talking about change of mindset. And of course, it's quite clear that if the business industrialists put money, they will want some specific thing, But I give you an example. I was working closely with people in Frankfurt. They were all doing simulations of nucleus-nucleus collisions for production of argon plasma. And that was their most popular course for diploma, what they call diploma, which is like masters. They used to have brutal competition to get into that. And then I asked, kya ho gaya bhai? I don't see so many fellows joining PhD. So they get job immediately after diploma. The Mercedes-Benz is taking them and putting them on simulating collisions of two cars, cars with walls, collision of car with the people. They had one group of people working on hydrodynamics. The relativistic heavy ion collision of nuclei is created as a hydrodynamic, produces a fluid which can be treated as hydrodynamics. All these boys who were trained in this, they were again being hired by Mercedes-Benz because they had a problem. As the petrol went into the carburetor, occasionally there was a bubble formation in that jet, which was creating a lot of problem. And they wanted to solve it. What did they do? They called these people. So fundamental, superficially, there is no comparison between nucleus-nucleus collision and which is a fundamental problem. So Saurendu will give half his right hand to get some nice results on that. Okay, but and that, so research करिए, कुछ न कुछ निकलेगा. That is my view. This may be too simplistic, but I still want to hold on to this faith that research, whether it is applied or fundamental, will do good.
It's a very good note, something very rewarding for us. It is already this place to say that there is a huge synergy between research and applied. In fact, I didn't want to name it, but there are also similar example of how somebody develops a software to study maybe some facts, but the software would be useful for a shell company and so on. So I think
large number of softwares which were developed in astrophysics, astronomy, are now being used in everyday life. Even the GPS was originally developed in astronomy. World Wide Web. World Wide Web. Yeah.
So with that, we really want to thank today's speaker for taking us to a large canvas, large space, but also make us think on various problems. I think we are all contributed immensely to this very nice discussion, which opened up many more insights into what Dr. Srivastava spoke.
Thank you.
Sir, we would like to give you this little memento as a token of remembrance.
Thank you.
Okay, so this forum that you spoke on has completed 40 years this year.
And I assume that this is all gold.
No, it's gold.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll put it in. Okay, thank you very much, and please join for a cup of coffee.